Hi there, it's Stephanie Shea, Chief Astrologer for janspiller.com, here again with Val D'Ambrosio for our episode 12 of Coaching Through the Astrological Forecast. We've made it all the way around the zodiac, and we're excited to talk about Libra season. At the time we're recording this, it's very timely because Mercury is about to go retrograde in Libra, even before the sun moves into Libra. So I'll give people a heads up on that. But I always love to start talking about the things that I celebrate about Libra energy, whether it's your sun sign, your moon sign, or some other part of your chart. Libra people are so good working with other people. They tend to just usually have the right thing to say and know what to do to bring people together and create fair situations. There's this sense of diplomacy. If I wanted somebody to kind of help represent me or help me craft what should I say, I would maybe talk to a Libra person. They're very fair minded and can often have a sense of what's going to work out best for the people involved in the situation. This is all when Libra energy is functioning at its highest. And again, when Mercury goes retrograde in Libra, some of this stuff, it can get kind of turned backwards. We're going to talk about that. But other Libra things that I love is their eye for aesthetics. Usually Libra people are great with fashion or colors or decorating and just making things look beautiful. They often can find that balance between their work and their home life and just seem to have well-rounded friendships and interests. Peacemakers for sure. And again, this can kind of get overdone, but sometimes that's a useful role if there's contentious people, say in a family or something, a situation. Maybe the Libra person in the family helps to diffuse some of that and create more peace. And a lot of that's due to their really good communication skills, as I mentioned. Just kind of being able to ask people questions, knowing what it is that might be helpful for someone to hear. They can be very dedicated partners. Libra rules partnership. And it goes without saying they're good team players. I always think of teamwork and Libra going together. So I am looking forward to the sun moving into Libra later in September on the 22nd. That's the equinox. And that I think, okay, this is good energy for some teamwork. And I see Libra people as very charismatic and charming, just having this really nice personality that other people are drawn to. And that can really help them make connections and to bridge the gap again between very different kinds of people. So you might find a Libra person has a lot of different types of friends. Now, as I mentioned, Libra season is going to begin September 22nd. It goes through October 22nd. We're going to have that Mercury retrograde September 9th to October 2nd. And the Libra part of the retrograde is first. It is September 9th through 22nd. If you check out my September astrology video, I go more in depth about this. It will retrograde back to Virgo September 23rd to October 2nd. Now, Mercury will move forward again in Libra October 10th. That's a good date to note because that is when we'll feel more of the benefit of Mercury in Libra when it's moving direct. We're going to all feel some of these out of balance, which sounds funny, right, to say about Libra, but that's the way I usually phrase it, out of balance energies while this Mercury is retrograde in Libra. The new moon coming up is 2 degrees Libra. It's September 25th, so it's technically, in this Mercury retrograde period, but it's still a great time for setting intentions, especially related to partnership. Just know it's not going to unfold immediately, but it's things to begin thinking about. And of course, the full moon is opposite Libra. That's coming up at 16 degrees Aries on October 9th. I haven't put the October video up yet. I'm giving you a sneak preview, but I always look at the sign opposite because that tells you a lot sometimes about what can help rebalance. These opposite signs actually have a lot in common. So when we talk about what's going on with Libra, with Val, we're gonna kind of look at okay, what are some things that maybe Aries does that could help Libra in their to rebalance. And Venus will enter Libra September 29th through October 22nd. That's kind of some romantic placement with Venus there, and we'll come out of the Mercury retrograde. So yeah, that's the rundown, a little sneak preview. I've been writing about 2023 and our solar eclipses. Two of them will be Aries and Libra next year. So that'll be something to be thinking about as we're talking about this stuff too, because eclipse season can definitely stir things up and make the energy of the sign not express in its full power, but more in a disempowering way. And that's what we want to help you navigate. So the first thing that can get kind of out of whack with Libra energy in something like a Mercury retrograde in Libra is being overly accommodating. When you think of Libra people, when you think of traits that could not serve them. It could be overly people pleasing, right? This is kind of a cliche, but it comes from somewhere. It's definitely not how Libra people are all the time, but it can happen when they want to make everyone around them happy and feel some sort of harmony. But really, it might be just the appearance of harmony. And the element of fairness that they value so much is actually missing. So this is the thing I was excited to talk to you about, Val, is because you probably work with a lot of couples and just people who might be, one person is overly concerned about other people, whether it's their partner or the friends, and they kind of forget to put themselves back in the equation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love it. And, I love that, with the Mercury in retro in Libra, it's exciting because if you notice as you're listening to these, that these are things that you have been aware of. Think about the Mercury. You always say this, like it's a time to renew or review or recommit, all those re's. And it's so, can we get excited about the potential of learning to be a new way around these behaviors and tendencies that we picked up along the way, and oftentimes, remember, most of these come from our childhood or ways we were raised. So either we show up exactly the same or exactly opposite. But it keeps us further from often where we want to go, what we want to feel. And so in that, going to what you're talking about, being overly concerned, what I notice is that with this tendency of putting people other people at the expense of yourself and wanting to create in order to create harmony, that there's a lack of knowing personally what really brings that person joy, like authentic joy. And so my invitation would be really sitting down and contemplating, and doing this not just once, because we change throughout our lives. So really asking ourselves a question like, what brings me joy? And giving yourself the permission to really take time with it, not just like spending time with my friends, being there for other people. You know what I mean? It's like really, really take your time, because when you get tuned into those things that bring you joy, then when something's in front of you, and let's say that somebody does want something and it's opposite of what would bring you joy, you'll have a greater sensing of it, a greater knowing of it, of even potentially more visceral experience of it. And then those things that bring you joy, the next thing would be do more of them. Just do more of them, whatever it is for you. The other thing that comes to mind is, let's say somebody, again, there's an authentic, beautiful desire of this Libra energy to be there for other people. They really get so much from it and they love being that person. But again, it can be at the expense of themselves. And that's often very, very unconscious. They're not aware of that. And that, even that dismissing their own needs, it becomes so familiar that knowing that getting their own needs fulfilled is so unfamiliar. Right. So we're always going to move toward what's familiar. So um, giving yourself the space and the permission for not answering. Like, let's say somebody says, "Hey, can you help me move this Saturday?" And maybe the first response would be, "Absolutely, I'll be there." But even if you think the answer is going to be yes, you have a clear Saturday, nothing's going on, you love that person, you want to be there. My invitation is give yourself 24 hours, period. And I would invite making that a quote unquote rule for yourself for a while, just to get into the habit, because the next step is to really check in, to give yourself space to feel how you feel around it, and going into your body, because oftentimes we're being led by this, and it's just like, well, yes, absolutely, yes, no problem, no problem, and there's a dissociation from our body. And we talk about this a lot in the different videos, and in this world, in this society, we're for sure very dissociated from our bodies. And so that really, the opportunity to really become aware of your body's wisdoms, to check in with your emotions around something, your body sensations around something. Do you feel a tightness in your belly? Do you feel butterflies in your belly? Do you feel tight? Do you feel your shoulders going up to your ears? And the more you start having that relationship, you start to get to work on and really utilize that powerful gift you have of balance. Because when you're connecting with these other parts of yourself, your body wisdom, your emotion wisdom, right? And you get into the sensing, now you're creating a greater balance instead of always just using this, because this becomes overly imbalanced. So that's what I would say around that. And I'm curious, like when you speak about what the opposite of that is, you said Aries, right? So in this respect, in the sense of where not being overly concerned with other people, right? So what would you say Aries then? What would be the invitation of the opposite sign being Aries?
Right, right. And yeah, I feel like I know this one really well because I'm not just an Aries, but I'm an Aries rising. And so my partnership house, which is called the descendant, opposite the rising sign, is Libra. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm constantly having to do a balance between, okay, what's honoring myself, what's honoring others, and not trying to pull it more to one side than the other. But that's kind of the trick, I think, with all the signs, and especially maybe if you're looking at your rising sign versus what rules the partnership part of your chart. Partnership part of your chart isn't just marriage, it's also all kinds of friendships and business working together. And so yeah, if you feel out of balance in this way we're describing, especially during the Mercury retro in Libra, think, okay, Aries is about the self and it is about the body, more than Libra is more in their head as an air sign. So that would be a great one to check in with, and thinking about, okay, what do I need? And then how can I maybe present that, so people know what I need. And this was a big Jan Spiller thing too. I remember when she talked about the nodes, and somebody maybe who has the, Aries North node, Libra South node. Well, they maybe had a past life of not showing up for themselves and always kind of letting the other person be in charge. And Jan's advice is, hey, to be a better partner, you gotta speak up, or the other person's not gonna be able to honor what you need if they don't know what it is. Yeah, so that's great. I'm glad we brought this up, and yeah, this is especially helpful for me as an Aries rising person. Yeah, so some of the other things that can happen when Libra energy gets out of whack is second guessing. I think in an effort to include everybody, maybe Libras start asking their other people's opinions. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think Libra energy can be more susceptible sometime to second guess themselves after they hear someone else's opinion, and actually like downplay what they originally were thinking or feeling. So I was curious how you could help, some clients who got easily swayed or
Yeah.
distracted by other people's opinions, and kind of get them centered back to what they were originally feeling.
Yeah. Well, and before I go into like the guidelines or the tools that I would say, like I want to just point out the importance. I was thinking about this. the importance of really gaining an understanding about something helps us to um, initiate greater desire to do something differently. So the more we have an understanding. So when I say that, what I mean is understanding of the whole point of view, because the one point of view of going, well, it's fine. And it doesn't really matter if I have that. And what they want kind of makes sense. So, yeah, I'll totally go with it. So that I understand that point of view, but here's now the other point of view of that. If you're in a partnership or in a business or a friendship with somebody that continually does that, it can leave that person feeling certain things like that they're not in a partnership. They don't really have a teammate. They always have to lead, and it can get kind of exhausting. They can also feel like an island, right? And there also might be this lingering fear that over time resentment's going to build up, and they're just waiting, for this Libra person or this person that sways a lot to just get so built up inside that it's just going to blow out or come, in the back door or, passive aggressively, and so just keeping that in mind, that I know that again the idea is to get along and create harmony and just to make nice, play nice, but there is this piece that could really perpetuate potential toxicity that wouldn't feel good and will lead you again further away from what you desire, which is greater harmony and greater connection and greater fairness and all these different things. So just keep that in mind and seeing the big picture. And then the guidelines, almost like a few steps that I would invite you to consider is that first, um, before you going to the other person for their thoughts, their opinions, or their ideas about something, is really giving yourself, like checking in, giving yourself that time for with your own opinions, even if it seems totally scrambled in your head and you can't even, but just giving yourself that honor and that time to just kind of be a little bit more aware of your own internal wisdom and insight. Then the other thing is I would say having your certain people, right? So people that aren't going to be steamrollers and aren't going to be people that are just going to, you should do this, you need to do this, or disregard your needs or anything like that, and just want to kind of control. I mean, listen, going to those people that can really make clear decisions and steamroll and everything else, that's useful. Yet sometimes that it's really wonderful to have certain, maybe it's 2 or 3 people that you can go to, not only that can give you their opinion but from a neutral stance, but also have the awareness to check in with you around maybe where you stand with it, where they're not just owning it and taking the whole thing over. And so the other thing that I would recommend is having having an idea about, like, if you want to tell the other person that you're recruiting for their information or their insight, letting them know in advance, you know me well, right? So you can preface this, you can ask them to create this container to be heard, to share this information. You know me well, and my tendency has been to sway, and what I really would like to do is I want to know your opinion, yet I don't want to dismiss my own self. Now again, this might be very uncomfortable to say, but that's okay, because you're learning and practicing and recommitting to a new way of being. So then the last thing is that after these people have given you their insight, again, going back to your own self, time to really sit with and be with the information you got, whether that's journaling or anything else, reflecting on how you feel about each one of these. And again, checking in with the whole self, the whole body, your emotions around it, your sensation around it, and giving yourself that time to settle your nervous system so you can really gain your own wisdom with the information that you had. And now you're playing all of the beautiful gifts that you have with that Libra energy, the ability to, communicate well with yourself, the ability to create harmony, the ability to create fairness. You're allowing yourself to be heard, so just keeping those things in mind.
I think those are great guidelines. And yeah, I like that about thinking about the people that they do choose as maybe a sounding board, even. Sometimes it could be for advice. I think Some of the best feedback I've gotten is people who observe me and they'll say, wow, when you described scenario A, your face lit up. Did you know that? And I'd be like, wow, okay, they're actually tuning into what I feel, not just like, well, I think scenario B sounds amazing, you know? So my face maybe didn't light up at that one if it sounded amazing to someone else. So this is good. I think Libras can observe, and it doesn't mean you can't have all different kinds of friendships, but the people that you select when you really want some opinions in a more objective way, that's where it can be very helpful. And I like the journaling piece as well. That's going to really redirect your thoughts. And really, during Mercury retrograde, journaling is so powerful because we're all being directed to look inwardly and review our lives in some way. I think when Mercury's retrograde in Libra, people are reviewing their relationships a lot, and it's really good to notice what comes up. Not the best time to act on it, but you can review the journal after Mercury retrograde and go, wow, here's some things that came up for me. Yeah. So
Great thing.
this last piece, I think a lot of people feel familiar with, especially if they have a lot of Libra in their chart, and it is avoiding confrontation. I mean, most people don't like confrontation, but some people handle it better than others. I think Libra energy, when it's really functioning well, is masterful at negotiation. But sometimes I think when they're not feeling their strongest self, they can circumvent that and choose to avoid confrontation and just, okay, we'll just don't rock the boat. And of course, that can work temporarily, but it doesn't solve things, and usually things get worse. So it's better to try to take these steps, but it can be scary. And so, how do you coach your clients who want to start engaging in healthy confrontation and negotiation?
So, okay, I see this one a lot. I experience it in my partnership, so I get it. Um, and first of all, again, the awareness, the understanding, we gain greater understanding so we can see the whole picture, and then we can have even more incentive to potentially make a change, right? We see different possibility. And so when you're in a relationship, partnership, friendship, work relationship with someone that is avoiding conflict again and again and again, just remembering, first of all, that everything's energy. And I would imagine that most people watching this are aware, they have astute sensing. They can sense. You can sense when someone's off. You can sense when someone's down. You can just sense it and feel it. Well, now you're close with this person. Maybe you're living with them or you spend a lot of time with them, and they're not speaking to this elephant in the room. They're not speaking to this. Well, the person that you're in a relationship with and connection with can feel this, and then they can a few things. They can internalize it. They can start getting questioning and whatever. And if the whole thing is no, it's fine, or I'm okay, no, everything's good, it's all good, that there would be that would again create toxicity over time. It would create a wedge of energy, a distance of energy between the two of you. And in addition to that, it can also start to, and I see this happen, deteriorate trust. Because if you're not trusting yourself in that moment to speak to your truth and what's really on, then they can't trust you to not only handle, but that you're going to actually be authentic about what you're sharing, about what you're revealing, or anything like that. And so over time, there could be a withholding from them. So just know it might feel like a short term, it feels easy, but in the long term, it could really wreak havoc over time. So just knowing that. Um, and then, I see this a lot. I hear this a lot when there are individuals who have a belief, because this is what it really all is. We're led by our beliefs. We're driven beliefs. We think a thought long enough and we believe it to be true, and then we start living it. We become it. So um, if you were raised in a family of a heavy conflict, or where people were brushing things under the rug with a smile on their face and never talking about things, you probably learned a tendency, right? Libra or not Libra, it doesn't matter, right? So we all may, a lot of us may have these tendencies and not have any Libra. And so just knowing that there might be a story that you often attached to. So start paying attention to when it comes to conflict, what's your story around it? Do you actually say it? So what I hear is, oh, I'm not good at conflict. I don't like conflict. I don't do conflict. And so before that anything happens where there's going to be the need for conflict or a conversation or maybe a disagreement or anything like that, and that's the first thing that's on the table, that's right there, that means they're taking their old self, who they've been up to this point, they're putting it right there. And in that moment, they're not wavering. They're in their mind, in their head, they've taken the identity of this is who I am, and I don't do conflict. I don't like to conflict. So I would say start to become aware of when you bring that languaging in, when you start to identify yourself with that, and in that moment, reframe it. I don't like, oh, you know what? I'm getting more comfortable with conflict. I used to not be comfortable with conflict, and now I'm really working on conflict. Up until this point, I was not comfortable with conflict, and I'm learning to be more comfortable. So you're giving yourself that permission to be a different person within this space of conflict. And let's just call it what it is too. If you think about anything, and I know all of you guys know this, but in order for anything to change, we need to rub up against something, right? In order for a snake to shed its skin, it's got to rub up against something, right? The butterfly has to go into the chrysalis. There's going to be this darkness, this heaviness, this density, right? So if you think about anything in your life, that conflict, that rubbing, that creates the change. So it's inevitable. So learning how to be with it would be very useful, and it would be a very useful tool in life in general, as a parent, as a coworker, as a partner. So just, you can either stick with the story and the identity of, oh, conflict's hard and I don't do it, and give other person the power and give away your power in those moments, or you can recognize, you know what, conflicts is going to happen and I get to learn to be different with it. So the last thing that I would say is or two things, that when you start to practice speaking to things or having conflict or leaning in and being uncomfortable around conflict, really creating a safe container for yourself. So really starting to practice with people that you really trust, like the ones that Stephanie was talking about, the ones that know you well enough, the ones that can really be there for you, that aren't going to steamroll you, or but really being like, okay, so you know that this has been uncomfortable for me up until this point. I have something I want to say, and I'm feeling a lot right now. You know, be aware, be in your own self, be in your own body, and then sharing that. And maybe you have an agreement with that person that in those moments when you're learning this new muscle, you're building this new muscle inside of yourself, that they're going to hold a safe space. They're going to hold a safe container. Maybe they reflect to you like, wow, I really hear you're uncomfortable with this. Wow. Like, you know, but they're taking the listener. I call it we're listening through our adults, and you're just really taking you're asking them to take the stance of the no judgment of the adults inside of them, being able to hear you as a human who has their own human feelings. Right. And then the last piece, there was a lot that came out of this, but the last piece is really recruiting and thinking about like those areas, and even reflecting on the areas of where you're really good at using your voice, you're really good at negotiating, and really remember that you actually, because what I often see, not always, people are really good at either, you know, negotiating or even conflict or using their voice when it comes to work, but when it comes to intimate relationships, friendships, or, you know, intimate partnerships, that's where it's very timid. And that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
But if you recruit and you're like, okay, I know what it feels like when I'm at work and I have that conversation and I can easily do that, and you just start to let yourself, and you remember and you remember and you remember that superpower inside of you, you start to get more comfortable with it. And then when you're in that moment of conflict with the person that you care about, that you can recruit those feelings in that moment and bring that part of you with you.
That's so good. Yeah, and it just reminds me of what we were talking about before we made this video, where we've been working really hard. So the people under the energies of the signs we're talking about don't feel stereotyped or pigeonholed into these things, because a lot of pop psychology will say, oh, Libras, they're just going to avoid conflict. And, you know, it's like, yes, that can happen. And guess what? Libras can change that about themselves. You know, Jan always believed in everybody's free will. That's the way I was taught astrology. That's the way Valerie coaches, you know. Yeah,
Mhm.
sure, we might have certain tendencies, and I think astrology that's happening in the sky can bring out those tendencies in everybody at times. But the good news is, yeah, we don't have to be stuck with that. And there's this whole host of really positive traits that go with each sign that are ours to claim in our
Mhm.
chart. And so I get excited about that. That's been one of the
Ah,
most fun parts of this series.
totally. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we've given people some good tools as we head into Mercury retrograde in Libra and Libra season in general. And we will also leave these videos up so they're here for reference. So next year when the season comes around, I'll put a little note so okay, the dates are going to change in some of the astrology that I'm talking about, but the themes are ever present with us, and that's why this was a really wonderful series to create so people could use it as a resource.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been so much fun. So much fun. And I love that you're putting this out for the Mercury retrograde. So it really supports people in that time for sure with the Libra energy and just the remembering that, like you just said, I truly believe we're never given anything more than we can handle. And actually we're given precisely what we can handle. And, I know that when I was first spoken to about my chart when I was 15 and I started to learn about it, I mean, I was devastated when I heard about my chart and I was like, oh God, it's so hard. It's so hard. And I became a victim to it. And when I just started to really have a different shift of perspective and just recognize that I believe I chose my chart. And I believe that I came in with to transmute, to rise above, to learn, to grow, to become these parts of myself. And really, we get to step into these beautiful gifts with such wisdom if we choose to. And that's what hopefully these that's what's a huge part of our intention of these videos. And so it's so much fun and just utilizing and going back to these tools um can be really beneficial and just in just everyday life in many different areas of your life. And then
Oh yeah.
my ask is, sorry, my ask is like if there is something that you would like Stephanie and I to talk about in the future, one of the things we've spoken about is, doing a series on relationships or anything like that. But if there's some idea that you have that you want to hear more of specifically in a certain genre or theme, that would be really useful as well.
Yeah, we'd love to hear that, and I've really appreciated all the comments that we have gotten. It's been really nice to hear that people got some things out of these
Yeah.
videos for sure. Feel free to share with your friends, and we'll sign off for now. But yeah, hopefully we'll have something cooked up in the future, and I hope everyone has a wonderful Libra season. And thank you, as always, Val.
Yeah. Thank you. Pleasure. True pleasure.